Hi everyone, my name is Abhishek and welcome back to my channel. In this video, we'll talk about what are some of the basic Git interview questions and their answers. So this is part 1 of Git interview series. We'll do future videos where we'll talk about advanced Git interview questions. So for today, we have these 13 interview questions I try to put together from various sources and some of my previous interview experiences. I hope you'll find this useful. So let's quickly jump and take a look at each of them. Question number 1. Is Git a distributed or centralized version control system? What is the difference between them? Okay, so basically, centralized version control systems are the traditional version control systems. They are not seriously used these days. I mean, very few people might be using it, but mostly they are not used. They are like SVN, CVS. These are the centralized version control systems. And then you have Git, which is a distributed version control system. The major difference is that in centralized version control system, you have the client and server architecture. And server, which is a remote repository, has all the copies of your code, like all the versions of the code are only available with the server. Whereas in the distributed version control system, every developer has all the versions of the code, like all the copies of the code are with each and every developer who has cloned the remote repository. So that's why it's called distributed version control system, because everything is distributed. Now, question number 2. What are the Git commands that you use to commit changes to your remote repository? Okay, it's a very basic question. So if you're working on Git and if you're making any changes to your code, end of the day, you have to submit the changes to your remote repository. So you basically use 3 commands: git add, git commit, and git push. So these are the 3 commands that you have to use. What is the difference between git fetch and git pull? Okay, it's mentioned as push. Actually, it's a typo, sorry. Difference between git fetch and git pull. So basically, Git fetch only, it informs you about the latest changes that are made to your remote repository. Let's assume that you are working on a specific repository and you have cloned the repository to your local. And after X days, you realize that you want to see what are the changes that are made to your remote repository by your friends, colleagues, or any other developers. So you want to see what are the changes. So you can simply do git fetch. It will show you the information about what are the changes that are made, but it does not merge the changes to your local repository. Whereas git push, it does the same, but it will also get the changes to your local repository. So that is the difference between git fetch and git pull. Now, question number 4. What is the difference between git merge and git rebase? Okay, similar to git fetch and git pull, this is also one of the commonly asked questions. So the difference between both of them is, so both of them are actually designed to do the same purpose. That means if you want to bring the code changes from one branch to the other branch, like you have changes that you want to bring from branch X to branch Y, you can either do git merge or git rebase. Both of them does the same purpose, but the only difference is how they are projecting the history. So whenever you want to see the git history, you got the new changes. So if you want a linear history, you use git rebase. Whereas if you are not bothered about the git history, you can simply do git merge. So git merge is the most, I can say that it covers a lot of disadvantages of git rebase. But if you are worried about your revision history, then you should always go for git rebase. It gives a linear code history. So that's why git rebase is preferred for the linear history. Now question number 5, what is the difference between .git and .git? So .git is everything in Git. So, .git folder contains all the information, like, all your project details, all the file information related to your commit, your remote repository addresses, like, what is your remote repository for your local repository. Everything is present in .git. All the things are stored as objects in Git. So .git is everything for your repository, and you should not be deleting your .git, because if you delete the .git, then your all the information related to the repository is lost. Then you have .git ignore. So .git ignore is basically, I mean, the name itself suggests. So if you want to ignore anything from .git, you simply go and put that file information in the .git ignore file. So let's assume that you don't want to push a specific file from your local repository to remote repository. So you can simply add the file reference in your .git ignore. Question number 6. What are pre-commit hooks and what are post-commit hooks? Okay, so for this you need to understand what a hook is. So hook is something uh, you want to perform an action before or after something, then it's called a hook. So the name itself suggests that you have pre-commit hook and you have post-commit hook. So pre-commit hooks are the actions that are taken before you do git commit, and post-commit hooks are the actions that are taken by git after the commit. So in the previous question I told you that you have to add the files and then you have to commit the files. So let's assume that you have certain files. You don't want to commit the files, like you have the password files, you have the some secure information files, like the maybe your public key, private key, some kind of things that you don't want to accidentally push to git. Okay, so for that you can configure them in your pre-commit hook, and you can tell git that before every commit, just execute this script. And what git does is that if you are accidentally even committing the public key or password or something, it executes this pre-commit hook that you have given to git before the commit, and it says, okay, so I cannot do this because your pre-commit hook is preventing it. And then you have post-commit hook. So post-commit hook is quite opposite. If you want to execute any action after your commit, then that's called post-commit hook. Now, question number 7, what is webhook? So similar to pre and post commit hooks, there is also another thing called as webhook. So webhook is basically part of your GitHub or Bitbucket or any of your Git implementations. What happens is that webhook is something that, let's assume you want to trigger a pipeline, or you want to run a Python program after your Git commit is done, or you want GitHub to perform an action. So simply you can configure a webhook. That means in GitHub you can create something called hook using this webhook, and GitHub does the action that you told it. So if you simply go to GitHub webhooks, there are a lot of actions that can be taken place. Like you can perform webhooks after issues, you can perform webhooks after pull requests, you can perform webhooks after issue comments, everything. For every action in GitHub, you can configure a webhook. Question number 8, how to pull and push changes to Git. Okay, so this is a very easy one. So the command is straightforward. If you want to push, you can use git push, and if you want to pull, you can simply do git pull. Now, question number 9, what is Git Stash, and talk about its use cases. Okay, so basically Git Stash is temporarily saves changes that you have made on your working copy. Let's assume you're working on a code change, and immediately there is a very serious bug, and you want to move from this bug to the other bug. Okay, and you cannot commit these changes because they are not ready. So what you can simply do is that you can stash these changes, which means you are temporarily saving them in your Git, and you move to a different bug. You make those code changes, and once you're satisfied with them, you push them, and then you come back and say git stash pop. So whatever the changes that you have stashed, they will be you can get those changes back. So that's about git stash. And then you have question number 10, what is the difference between git clone and git fork? Okay, so difference between git clone and fork is that git clone is basically you're creating a copy of whatever remote repository that is, whereas git fork is that you are getting the git repository into your namespace. So let's assume that there is a GitHub repository on my name. Okay, so I've created a GitHub repository, and one of my colleagues wants to uh, have that repository in his namespace. That means in his let's assume my GitHub ID is Abhishek.Veeramalla and his ID is XYZ. So he can get the same Git repository from Abhishek.Veeramalla to XYZ. So that's not cloning, but he's actually getting the whole thing into his namespace, and he makes his own changes, and someone else, if they like his changes, he can clone his fork. So basically you're creating an entire copy from someone's namespace. That is git fork. Whereas in git clone, you can simply get changes from a remote repository to your laptop. That's it. So that's the difference between git clone and git fork. Now question number 12 is, what is cherry pick in Git? Okay, so cherry picking in Git is nothing but getting, let's assume that you have a commit in XYZ branch, and you want to get the same commit as it is from XYZ branch to uh, a branch called feature. Okay, so if you know that there are no merge conflicts, Okay, instead of manually copying the changes or using git merge or something, you can simply do git cherry pick, so that the whole commit, if there are no merge conflicts, can be taken directly, and the commit history will be the same, the person who is committing, everything would remain the same. So you are simply cherry picking it from one branch to the other branch. Question number 11 is how to amend a commit in Git. So amending is nothing but you want to add something to the existing commit. Okay, let's assume you have done something wrong with your commit, and you have pushed the commit. Okay, and if you want to fix the broken commit, what you can simply do is that you can use git commit hyphen hyphen amend, and that would actually amend, or it would fix your broken change. So that's about git commit amend. And the final question that you have is, how do you resolve a merge conflict in Git? So this is a very practical scenario. If you have a merge conflict, how do you fix it? Basically, it depends on the merge conflict itself. So how did you run into this merge conflict? Who is the developer that has made the change? Let's assume that you are making a logic change to the calculator. Let's assume you are improving the addition function, and then you realize that it is actually creating a conflict with the existing code. So what you can do is that you can sit with the other developer, try to understand why he has made that change, and you can come to a consensus that which change is correct and which change is wrong. So that is a simple way of resolving a merge conflict. So it can be resolved by collaboration. Discuss which change is required, if his change is required or your change is required, and you can with consensus you can come to a common point, and you can simply use the fix the merge conflict. So that's the easiest way of fixing the merge conflict. And once you fix the merge conflict, you have different options. It depends on how you are merging it, whether you are using git merge or git rebase. So if you run into a conflict, what you do is you can do git merge hyphen hyphen abort to completely remove your changes. Or if you know that your changes are fixed, you sat with the developer and you understood what has to be changed. So simply add the changes back and do git merge hyphen hyphen restore or git rebase hyphen hyphen restore. So this is the thing that you can do. Yeah, I think this is all that we have for today. And if you have any further questions on this, please let me know. We can discuss in the comment section, or you can also ping me on LinkedIn. Thank you.